Droids are what make the Star Wars galaxy work. They do everything from saying gonk while ambling around to keeping little Bomar monk brains alive. But they're also at the core of a key military strategy, which succeeded in attacking two major targets in the exact same unexpected way. And no, I'm not talking about battle droids. Kuat had moved its way in the decades before and during the Empire's reign to being the galaxy's preeminent shipyard, as I covered in my last video. But on top of ship production, it remained a key Imperial fortress world throughout the first 4 years following the Battle of Endor and Palpatine's death, while the New Republic slowly took over the core, along with a few other key holdout worlds like Chasen, Corellia, and those plagiarists over at Rendili. While Kuat's Imperial defense forces had slowly been drained by Imperial leaders elsewhere, Kuat maintained its own private defense force, still technically under the Empire's command and led by well-respected Imperial Admiral Terran Rogris, but owned by Kuat so they couldn't just run away with them as easily as the other forces stationed there. This defense force included 12 Star Destroyers, the Star Dreadnought of Unknown Class Aurora, which I've represented here as a Praetor 2, as we've done in the Empire War Expanded mods, and then 3 battle cruisers, which I've got here as Allegiance classes, being the Luminous, Event Horizon, and Stellar Halo, all of that being supplemented by stationary defense platforms. This would be a daunting force for any attacking navy to face, let alone the fledgling New Republic, so they decided to approach a very different way, one which didn't involve liking the video and subscribing for more, but that's something you are still free to do. The new plan to avoid fighting that fleet head-on was masterminded by Wedge Antilles, General Aaron Kraken of New Republic Intelligence, and most importantly Ralrai Mavunk, the Twi'lek Minister of Finance for the New Republic. While the short-term preparation for seizing Kuat involved staging a large fleet at Horthov, a nearby system, the most important preparation had begun months before. The New Republic had begun infiltrating astromech droids into the droid pool servicing the Kuat fleet, preloaded with viruses. Once the astromechs transferred their viruses to the Imperial ships, they'd erase their own programming, and then they'd just seem like perfectly normal astromechs. When the droids had finished their job, Tycho Celchu and Surprise Squadron, a purpose-built squadron of A-Wings intended for this mission, jumped into Kuat laden with powerful ion torpedoes, quickly shutting down Luminous and 3 of the other Star Destroyers. Meanwhile, Event Horizon and 4 others were locked down and made to fire on the remaining ships by the astromechs viruses, immediately reducing the Imperial garrison by over half of its effective numbers, although still with Aurora and several other ships remaining. In the middle of this action, Muvunk called the Kuat Drive Yard's directors and informed them that not only had they wiped out all of these defenses, he and the New Republic had been secretly buying up stock to the point of owning 34% and making him CEO. Chairman Kolvolt tried to protest, but with the fleet so heavily reduced and the New Republic's Horthav fleet much more close by than the Imperial leadership at Arinda on the other side of the galaxy, Kuat decided to surrender, something which was only made possible by the distribution of brave, malignant little astromechs. Unfortunately, in the short term, this turned into a fairly limited victory. They did get some ships out of capturing Kuat, but Aurora and Stellar Halo were jumped into the sun by Imperial agents, and many of the active dockyards were sabotaged as well. A similar droid-based strategy would be used nearly a decade later in this 17 ABY Almanian uprising and surrounding events. Queller, formerly known as Dolph, was a fallen former student of Luke Skywalker who wanted revenge on the New Republic after their failure to act when his planet, Almania, was under the thumb of its former authoritarian rulers, whom he deposed before becoming his own authoritarian ruler. Part of his plot to exact revenge was taking over a droid factory on the planet Telti, which he placed under the direction of another fallen student of Luke's new academy named Brachus. The droids produced here, rather than distributing viruses, went with a much less subtle method of attack, exploding. They were able to infiltrate the New Republic fleet and even Senate with these bomb droids, fulfilling various tasks from maintenance to manning starfighters as lovable astromech partners. This would not only allow them to destroy or heavily damage multiple starfighters, most notably that of Luke Skywalker, whose onboard computer had been rigged with an explosive, but also to execute a successful attack on the Senate itself. The explosion in the Senate killed multiple planetary representatives, and planets began petitioning the New Republic to allow former Imperials to run in the replacement elections, saying, quote, "Some of the best politicians had kept their people alive by working with the Empire as minor functionaries," end quote. The election of many of these individuals almost led to the end of Leia's political career as chief of state, with her former majority in the Senate being overcome by a lot of these new members. If not for a quick plan to have her temporarily replaced by Mon Mothma and a mission which stopped Queller, an impending no-confidence motion would have probably succeeded against her. Basically, people had assumed that Han had been responsible for the bombing in some way, which meant that they now assumed Leia was also responsible. Ultimately, Luke, Han, and Leia were able to take Queller down, but these events could arguably be said to have something to do with the growth of attitudes in the Senate, which caused the Core and Inner Rim to abandon the Mid and Outer Rim in the upcoming Yuuzhan Vong War. And both of these examples just go to show you should never underestimate a droid.